Sure.
A lot of sugar.
Well, we're waiting on a few more friends, but we hate to get started late on our first class because then it just trickles down for the rest of the day. Welcome to the Gygi Chocolate Extravaganza. This is kind of like our candy making coverture chocolate day, which is going to be so fun. Have you, any of you ever attempted to make honeycomb, spun toffee? What other names are there?
Seafoam.
Seafoam. Has anyone ever attempted this? Oh, you guys are in for such a treat. This is like a science experiment in a pan, and luckily it tastes delicious afterwards. And so it's so fun to be able to. Do you do this with your kids?
Honeycomb?
Yeah.
No, it's too dangerous.
Okay. Like John also kicks his family out when he's doing just chocolate. So I was like, I didn't know if this was one of those things that you do with your kids. But candy making is one of those elusive things that I feel like if you didn't master it at one point, we're all looking for ways that like, wait, how can I incorporate that into these traditions that I do with my family? And we have John Neal here teaching us today, and he is like the man we've all been dreaming of. John is taken his love and affection for chocolate that he learned early on from his mother and has incorporated it into his life. And a huge part of this is just like, we were joking before class, he was like, I don't golf, I just make chocolate. So it's fun to be able to see those hobbies manifest into something so passionate. Because it just is it's contagious. And we want to be able to learn and experiment with the things that he does. And so did anyone watch his classes that we did virtually last year? Good, good. So you know a little bit about this, and you know like just the way that his mind works, because I think within candy making you kind of have to have that, like, this is what we do, obey these rules. You find your favorite pan, you find your favorite thermometer. Last year I brought him organic sugar thinking like, I'll get him the best thing, and it didn't work. And so we're learning that like you stick with what you know, and it's what makes candy making so much fun. So John comes to us from up in Cache Valley, so we're glad he's spending the day with us today. But just, we're really excited to make the honeycomb with you guys and then just experiment. So John, take it away and have a great time. If you guys have questions along the way, please ask them, and we're just going to be jumping right into this. So don't be bashful with that. So, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Is this being recorded?
We are sharing this live. Hi,
Instagram.
Instagram.
Pressure. So much pressure. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I love coming to Orson Gygi and teaching, because I kind of feel like it's like show and tell for me, because you're just gonna watch me do this, and it's something I love to do at home, and I get to do it in front of you. And Heather's right, it's all about kind of what you're comfortable with. I have brought my own pan, and I've brought my own thermometer, and I brought my own spatula, because they bring me comfort. Well, and actually, regarding your thermometers, like, it really is important that you're comfortable with your thermometer, because candy making is so like contingent on temperature, right? And so I know this thermometer for my next class for buttercreams. I brought a different candy thermometer, but for the sponge toffee, I like to use a digital thermometer, just because it seems like with sponge toffee especially, it's like at the end is when you get the biggest increase of your temperature, and it seems like the digital seems to keep up a little bit faster. That could that's not scientific. That could totally just be my impression. But we're gonna get started. What we're gonna do is, obviously, I'm gonna make sponge toffee for you. I did bring some samples too, so you can try that. And I brought some chocolate dip samples too. So I want to make the sponge toffee, and then I want to show you how I dip them, because that's a big part of it, right? We're just gonna get started. So if I can figure out this deal, we'll be off to a good start. So with the heat, and I actually use electric at home, but we'll adapt. I'm sure it'll work. It's like a medium low. So I always do the liquids first, okay? Part of that's because I don't want the sugar like burning first. So if I do the liquids first, the sugar doesn't seem to burn in the bottom first. I know the directions say don't stir, but my nature is to always I can't leave things alone. So I'm probably going to incorporate the water and the corn syrup and the sugar, and then I'm not going to touch it, I promise. But what do we got? So we got a half cup of water, 2/3 cup of corn syrup, and then 2.5 cups of sugar. Yeah, I'm going to incorporate this. Now, when I do this, I don't want any sugar crystals getting on the side of the pan. I think that's why the directions say don't stir it, because then that could lead to crystallization later on when it heats up more. However, the corn syrup acts as like an invert sugar, which impedes crystallization, and I believe that's one of the reasons it's part of the recipe.
Do you go by weight or volume?
You know, with this recipe, I go by volume, but actually, you know, most candy recipes I go by volume, but when I do chocolate, it's all by weight. We might talk about chocolate a little bit too, because that's kind of the whole, for me. All right, that's good enough. I'm gonna put in the vanilla now too. Some people put in the vanilla at the end, thinking that some of it's gonna boil off, but I haven't noticed a difference. So I put it in at the very beginning. So that's it. It's such a simple recipe, right? Really 3 ingredients, I guess 4 if you count the water, and then I guess 5 if you count the baking soda. But the baking soda, that's the other thing. With the baking soda, it says 2 tablespoons. Lately, I've only been doing 1.5, because it seems like I get plenty of those wonderful air bubbles with 1.5, but it doesn't have as much of that kind of baking soda metallic taste, right?
Is that altitude sensitive?
With the baking soda or with the temperature?
Both, actually.
You know, it would be with the temperature, yes. And so, let's see. Water boils at a lower temperature at a higher altitude?
Yes.
And so, yeah, I guess you would want to adjust a little bit. I'm in Cache Valley, which is just a few hundred feet higher, so for this today, I'm not going to adjust anything. But if you were in California, yeah, at sea level, you would want to adjust your temperatures. We are going to take this up to 300, but what I've noticed is it continues to cook once you take it off of the stove. And again, kind of in the spirit of at the very end, it raises the fastest. I usually take it off like at 295 or 296. And like by the time I get it to my hot pad, it's like at 300. You know what I mean? Because I don't like burnt sponge toffee. There's like this delicate balance of having it be at that hard crack stage, but not burnt, right? I've tried recipes with honey, because I'm like, oh, it's honeycomb. In fact, the design I put on these, I don't know if you can see that. Well, maybe I'll bring it over here. Oh, do you see that? It's a honeycomb design, right? And so it's like, oh, I call it honeycomb. I put a honeycomb design. I should probably find a recipe with honey. But honey, like, I can't get the right balance between it not burning or being too sticky. Like if I do it too low of a temperature, it doesn't burn, but it's too sticky. If I do it to 296, 297, it burns and it gets like just a burnt taste and it's not as good. And so this has no honey in it, even though we call it honeycomb. What that is, and I'll show you when I dip them. This might raise the temperature a little bit. Has anyone seen these? This is a cocoa butter transfer sheet. So this is cocoa butter that's been printed on essentially acetate, plastic, okay? And this is just one of the tools that us chocolatiers use to make our chocolates more pretty. But the cocoa butter, when we dip the sponge toffee onto the transfer sheet and it solidifies, if the chocolate is properly crystallized, which you'll learn in the tempering class, when it sets up, that cocoa butter transfers onto the chocolate and you get that really cool design. Yeah.
So does Orson Gygi have those, or where did you get that one?
No.
They don't.
They don't. Maybe in the future, but this one, I wish I could say I made it. No, that's my next set of golf clubs, is a cocoa butter printing machine. But no, I bought this at Chef Rubber. Yeah.
Where?
They've got other, let's see.
It's called Chef Rubber.
It's just kind of fun. I don't. It's a transfer sheet. Chef Rubber.
Online.
It's online, yeah. I hesitate to tell you to go to a different website. Don't go to that website. There's some other cool designs. This is like another one I found. I've got like a snowflake one that I'll do some like mint ganache on. But it's just kind of fun. These are some of the fun things. This is one of the reasons I love chocolatiering. It's like a creative outlet. I can hear that starting to boil, but it's gonna be a while before I need to put in my thermometer.
About how long does it normally? I guess it depends on the.
Let's time it. Good question. I want to say like 10 minutes. Yeah, we've got plenty of time. So yeah, I think we'll have plenty of time to cook it, and then I'll deal with that later. Pour it out, and then I've already got some pre-made ones, but once you pour it out, it actually solidifies pretty quickly. Like I said, it'll continue to cook on the parchment, and yeah, it'll start to solidify pretty quickly. I'm just going to put that out of the way. It gets like, this is the one recipe that I get super nervous about with my kids, because it gets like boiling, like it'll like melt your face off. That's what I tell them to scare them away from the kitchen. Like if this gets on you, it'll melt your face off. So stay out of here.
Can you estimate how many pieces that vegetable will
Yes. It makes, well, it depends if you're like me and like you shave them down to like this like pattern or like a shape that you want.
Okay.
It'll make, one batch will make about between 35 and 40.
Okay.
See, the thing with it though is like, it's just gonna be one big blob that solidifies, right? And so, I mean, if you're like a diamond cutter and you can like perfectly do it, maybe you can get 50 out of there. But, and sometimes I'll score it, like when it's not totally solidified, I'll score it, so hopefully I can get some lines that break a little bit easier. But sometimes it's just fun to like put it in a plastic bag and, you know, break it out that way. But yeah, I think you can get 40. Let's see, this is about, that's less than a batch because my kids were eating some. But yeah, this is what we're gonna dip into the chocolate.
Have you ever tried reducing the batch and using the bar pan?
I think we have another one to try a sample pre-chocolate, and then I'll let you try the post-chocolate. Say that again.
Have you ever tried reducing the batch and using a smaller pot?
You know, I haven't, and this is why. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. It's important that you have a big enough pot.
So we don't all have our rounds in there.
I
like it.
If I were to try to reduce it, I don't think I'd have like it would be like too thin of a layer to get like an accurate temperature. You know what I mean? And so I haven't tried to reduce it, no.
So what is your favorite pan?
This is a Calphalon. I believe it's a 6-quart. I'm not going to lift it up and check the bottom right now, but I believe it's a 6-quart. It is a 6-quart because right here. No, it's a 5-quart. 5 quarts. Yeah. You need at least a 5-quart pan because what's going to happen is when I put in the baking soda, it's going to rise. And I actually typically don't pour it out until it's about to the top.
Any possibility of pouring it in a mold?
Thank you for asking. I've tried. No.
Okay. That answers that.
Because I tried like a silicone mold because I wanted to get, I want those perfect squares or circles. Totally. And it just floats on top. It's like, has anyone watched Squid Games?
Yes.
You know that scene where they have to poke out the toffee? Yeah, this is basically that recipe. But what happens with the mold is like, it's just a small part of the mold. It doesn't go all the way into the mold. And like you could push it into the mold, but then you destroy all those beautiful bubbles. You know what I'm saying? So I've actually tried to take parchment, I put it on the silicone mold, I put parchment on top, and then I like try to scrape it into the molds. but then it gets all like thick and it doesn't have those beautiful bubbles that you want, right? Because that's the whole appeal of sponge toffee, I think, is those kind of airy bubbles that kind of melt in your mouth, right? So that's what we're going for.
That was my question. So I've had some that like you feel like you're gonna break your tooth.
Yeah.
Like it gets really crunchy and doesn't have the airy bubbles. Is that an overcooking thing? Is that a stir
That's
too much?
undercooking.
It's undercooking.
Yeah, that's undercooking, or possibly because if it's cooked properly, it'll melt in your mouth. I mean, it gets on your teeth a little bit, but not. It won't. You won't lose a filling, or you know what I mean. You shouldn't.
You just give it to you.
And it helps. It helps once the chocolate's on there, like with that. You do kind of taste. I don't know if anyone's tried that I passed around, but it does kind of get a metallic taste from the baking soda. But the chocolate makes that disappear. Yeah. Is that bag going around?
She put it in. She was gonna put it in cups.
Oh, beautiful.
For them.
Smart. Oh, that's smart. I guess we're still in a pandemic. Okay, these bubbles are they're still a little thin. I'm gonna wait till they're thicker before I put in my thermometer. Partly because I don't like to stand. Well, you can leave it, but if the thermometer touches the bottom of the pan, it's gonna give you a false reading. It's gonna be too high. You'll take it off too early. And so when I get the temperature reading that I want, I make sure it's not touching the bottom of the pan. Yeah. What other questions?
How far in
All the
advance
talking.
do you make the honeycomb versus when you dip it?
Oh, good question. So, in Utah, we've got a pretty dry climate, so it'll keep pretty long in a bag or in Tupperware. If we were in a more humid climate, you'd need to do it right away. Yeah, but the sponge toffee seems to keep the shelf. It's got a pretty long shelf life, I think. There's no cream. There's no and there's a little bit of water, but the corn syrup kind of takes up any water content that would provide a place for bacteria. It'll last a long time. So, but typically, if I'm making sponge toffee, like to give out to friends, I'll dip it the next day. Yeah.
Have you ever used golden syrup instead of honey syrup?
No. What's golden syrup made out of?
I don't know. It's what they use in England to make the honeycomb. So I wondered if it was substitutable or if it was different.
I think I haven't tried. I imagine you could use any invert sugar like glucose, or you could use honey, but like I said, I don't like using the honey because it burns. I've tried it. It's worth experimenting with. That's the fun, right, of candy making, is trying new things and experimenting and see what works and what doesn't. This is such a simple recipe, and I think sometimes simplicity is best, right? I'm just going to stick this in here. It's a little early. The bubbles are still really thin, but you kind of get a feel for when the bubbles are getting, they start getting thick, and it starts turning a more amber color. It's still a little early, but I can just leave that in there for now. But yeah, it's such a simple recipe. It's really just getting that temperature down. Having confidence, and it's if you get it right the first time, that's really lucky. I made 5 or 6 batches before I got it down and knew when to take it off the heat. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay, so it's so close to English toffee in some ways. I'm just wondering, in my recipe of English toffee, I have to have everything super cold.
Okay.
Hand cold, the water, the ice, and all that stuff. You don't have to do anything like that in the press. It's just put in and just raise it. Okay.
What's so English toffee? Tell me about that.
Well, it's very similar. Yeah, and it's harder. And then you can just.
Temperatures are similar.
Yeah, kinda. It has
A lot of butter.
A lot of butter.
Or yeah, like that. And it's not like Mary. It's
You put nuts in it ever?
Yes, of course.
I've done this recipe over pecans, and that turned out really good.
This over pecans.
Yeah. So I would just on the parchment where I poured out, I would just spread out, a single layer of pecans,
Now you're making me happy.
I know.
and that turned out really good. I've tried it with maple syrup, and that didn't turn out well.
What's your favorite chocolate to dip it in?
So, my philosophy on candy making with chocolate, I love fancy chocolate. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the dark, chocolate with the different flavor profiles and the bitters and the tannins and the different flavor notes. I love that. But when it comes to candy making, I really want the sponge toffee to be the star of the show. And so I just use chocolate, which I think I think Guittard makes a really beautiful, well-balanced, it's just chocolate. They're not trying to add in these complex flavor profiles there's notes of, it's earthy notes and tobacco notes. And just it's just chocolate, which I love about it. And so I'm using, for this one, it's Old Dutch, Guittard Old Dutch, which you can get that here. I actually I'll either add in some extra cocoa butter. The Old Dutch, if you've ever worked with it, is very thick. And so to kind of make it more fluid, I'll add in, there's another type of Guittard chocolate called Soleil d'Or, and it's much more fluid. It's actually designed for molding. And I'll add in some of that to make the Old Dutch thinner. You can hear the bubbles getting thicker. Yeah. Can you hear that?
Sometimes when you buy that seed bone, it's really hard to chew and reach your teeth.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I think undercooking.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you get it to that hard crack stage, it should melt. It should melt in your mouth instead of getting stuck to your teeth. Yeah. I would rather err on the side of not burning it though. So I'd rather have it stick to my teeth a little bit rather than burning it, just so I don't mess up the flavor.
I don't
So
mind that, it's just when it gets so hard.
yeah, I'm with you. So we're at 2. Well, it's on the bottom of the pan. So it says 272, but it's probably closer to 265. Yeah, it's going back down to 267. So when this gets to it's on the bottom of the pan, when it gets to 295, I'll pull it off and make sure it's not touching the bottom. I guess if I were smart, I would have one of those thermometers that just hooks to the side of the pan, but I'm not that smart, so. Ooh, that's hot. Can I get a couple of oven mitts? Yeah, so I love the Guittard Old Dutch. I prefer the milk chocolate with this recipe, but dark chocolate's good as well. But yeah, I want the sponge toffee to be the star of the show. I don't want people, thinking too much about the chocolate, even though at the end, I think you'll like it. Yeah, those are starting to get thick. I do let my kids help in the kitchen. Heather made me sound like a tyrant. Just not with the sponge toffee. No, we'll dip when, it's just candy I'm given to. Go ahead, you and then you.
Okay, it says that if there's, something about, the water, if it gets, or sugar crystals on the side, do you ever get sugar crystals in there? Do we have to worry about that?
I haven't. I've never had it crystallize. And so, again, I think that's the corn syrup doing its job, impeding the crystallization. So, I am really careful though, even still, not to get sugar crystals along the side. I know some people use a brush to brush it down. Sometimes if I see that, I'll just put the lid on and steam it down for 30 seconds.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll do that with my buttercream recipe as well. Just steam it down for 30 seconds. But, yeah, what was your question?
Do you temper your chocolate before you dip it?
Oh, yes, 100%. In fact, that's what we're going to use. I'm doing let me tell you about this. This is my other set of golf clubs. This is my easy temper machine. And, And let's talk about chocolate while we're waiting. We are getting closer, but yeah, you gotta temper the chocolate. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is that's how you make the chocolate get that gloss and that snap and that proper mouth feels, the proper crystallization of that chocolate. And so that, I'll talk to you about that in a minute. We're getting close. Essentially, what that machine does is I put pure cocoa butter in there, cocoa butter pellets, and it crystallizes it perfectly at 90 degrees. So I have just that form. There's 6 forms of cocoa butter that can form depending on the temperature. We're getting close. I better stop talking. I better focus or I'm going to screw this up and look like a moron. Yeah, we're at 294. All right, I'm going to take this off. Okay. Take it over here. So it's not panic mode. Like, it's okay if it sits for a second, but now I'm going to put in the baking soda. And then, is there any way to get inside that?
No, you have to move it under there
okay.
slightly.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Thick bubbles, right? Okay, and I'm going to use a sieve for the baking soda, just to make sure there's no clumps, right? Again, it's not panic mode, but you do want to move kind of expeditiously. And then I really want to incorporate all that baking soda. I usually stick this right in the sink right a bit. I'll just put on that pan.
I can take it.
Don't let that get on your skin.
Deal.
See how it's rising? So I'm going to let that rise.
John, I timed it from when you said we should time it,
Uh-huh.
and it was 14 minutes and 57 seconds.
Oh, nice.
So,
15 minutes.
yeah, 15 minutes from
Oh,
the
I got
time
some
you said-
baking soda on the top I didn't fully incorporate. That's my bad. Okay, it's at the top. So now I'm just pouring it out onto my parchment. And I could scrape the pan if I wanted to, but it would make some of that sponge toffee, it would lose some of the bubbles. And so I feel like I get enough out that I don't really ever scrape the pan. Okay.
So you waited until you got like almost your coffee pan and that part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to get as many bubbles as possible, right? So we're not gonna touch it. We're gonna let that cool. And it's kind of cooking in the middle still a little bit, but it's got that nice amber color.
Have you ever touched it at this point?
No. But I have gotten some on my finger before, and it hurts. It will blister, because I mean it's 300 degrees of like, you know,
Sugar.
sugar.
Does
Yeah.
it work to use a silpat mat to dump
Yeah.
data?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. This is going to, I can already tell, this is going to shrink down more than I'm used to. It was the sugar! No, I'm just kidding.
This was just regular fried sugar.
No, it's perfect.
Does the outside temperature, I mean, it's gonna be more humid, it's raining outside, does that affect it?
Yeah, I think it would. I don't know. I typically do chocolates, but that's more for the chocolate than the candy. I like to keep the house like at 67, 68 degrees. And then if it's raining outside, typically the humidity's too high, it can mess with things. But we're gonna let that cool. I do want to talk about chocolate a little bit. Oh yeah, so this machine is my easy temper machine. So I just put cocoa butter pellets in here. They're not quite ready. I don't know if you can see that, but I had cocoa butter pellets. And then this machine, overnight, it'll be ready by tonight, but it just keeps the temperature like at 90 degrees, which is the temperature where cocoa butter crystals formed the proper crystallization for the properties that you want of the chocolate. When you're tempering chocolate, it's all about the cocoa butter. So really a chocolatier is mastering the properties of cocoa butter. You know, some people say white chocolate's not chocolate because it doesn't have cocoa solids, but it has cocoa butter. So I think white chocolate is chocolate because really cocoa butter is the variable that you're trying to master as a chocolatier. Like I said, there's 6 different forms of cocoa butter. Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. They're really unstable. They melt in your hand. Have you noticed if you just melt chocolate, you get a bloom, like a white film on the top? That's the cocoa butter that's separated from the cocoa solids, right? And so when you're tempering chocolate, you're just going through a method of forming those cocoa butter crystals. And it's actually Form 5 that you want. The Form 5 cocoa butter crystals, they don't melt in your hand. They have like the right mouthfeel, and you know, that makes that gloss on the chocolate when it solidifies. And so what this does is this makes the Form 5 cocoa butter crystal. So all I have to do is melt chocolate. Let's say I melt 1,000 grams of chocolate to 90 degrees. I just put 1% of that in my chocolate and it's tempered. And so you don't have to go through the seed method or the table method or you don't even need a tempering machine. But that was like my toy this year, and it's been really fun. It speeds up the process quite a bit too. Let's see. What else? What else did I talk to you about? I feel like I've done so much show and tell. It's so fun. And then this just goes right in the sink, and it just melts with water. It comes off really easily. Yeah, this is kind of shrinking down, but it doesn't matter. You won't know the difference. I'll give you some of this stuff. That's good. Any other questions? Yeah.
You started talking before everyone came in about your thermometer and how you adjust it for each thermometer's a little different. Did you adjust this one?
So I just so I did a boil test on this one. And I think in Cache Valley I Googled it. It boils at like 204.5. And so I always do a boil test with my thermometers to make sure they're accurate. And this one was. I mean, you would think, I got these on Amazon. Actually, what this is that, oh, whoops. This thermometer actually comes with a spatula. So I got this on Amazon, but I used to use this to temper chocolate because I would stir the chocolate and then I'd have the temperature on the thermometer. But you would think they're all accurate, but some are a degree off. I have like 10 of these, and one of them's like 3 degrees off, and I don't know. It's kind of annoying, but oh, thank you. Yeah, we'll be talking a bunch
How
today.
long did you wait, before you scored it?
You can start doing that right now. That pan's kind of hot, so be careful there too. But yeah, I could start scoring it right now, and I won't destroy too many of those bubbles. But I like to put these, if I'm giving these to friends, they're going in a pound or a half-pound box. I used to make these just way too big, and they get harder to dip when they're that big too. You just make some lines like this.
It's still warm, correct?
It's still warm, yeah. It'll need another 10 minutes before you can break it. See, but on the edges I can tell, it might even break right there. Not quite. But I used to do like squares, and I don't do that anymore just because I found that it doesn't do much good. Whereas with this, it seems to break on the lines much easier. I could make one right here too.
Do you notice that a certain type of baking soda tastes better than the others? Because I heard that Rumford doesn't have as much metallic taste.
That's good to know. I'm glad you told me that because I haven't noticed. I just used, what did I use today? I used Bob's Red Mill baking soda.
And it may also, I don't know.
Maybe. But I just use the baking soda I put in my fridge to get the smells out. It's fine. No, I'm just kidding.
What about the thermometers that you put in?
Those have been really inaccurate for me. I've heard you can spend, like if you spend a lot of money on one, they're accurate, but the one I got for like $30 was always like 5 degrees off. And so I don't trust those as much. Maybe if I invested in one that was more expensive, but that was my experience. Yeah.
What kind is that?
Just the infrared ones. Is that what you're talking about?
The top?
Yeah, where you just point it and shoot.
It only tells the top.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's why I didn't have any success with it. These are great questions. Keep them coming. I think we'll get to, well, I do want to break this up for you, but I do want to get to dipping too. That's the fun part for me. Actually, I'm not going to put that. So this is cocoa butter, right? So if I put the cocoa butter right here where this hot pan was, I'm going to move this now. Maybe I can cool that down enough. Actually, I'll put it on another pan. It would melt the cocoa butter. Oh, jeez. I would burn myself on a gas grill. I would catch myself on fire. Like if I grab this, just like if I just put my thumb there, after a while it'll melt, and I notice it gets all smudged. But we'll put it on that and then dip it. So the sponge toffee is the star of the show. Obviously the chocolate's important too, but yeah, I just like a good balance, just chocolate.
So your machine only tempers the cocoa butter?
Only the cocoa butter. Yep.
Okay. And then does it allow you to combine the two in and keep it at temp? then?
So what I do is I melt my chocolate in a bowl, and then once I put in my 1% cocoa butter, I stir it up and it's tempered, and then I can just use.
And you just use it as a bowl? I didn't know if it held.
No,
chocolate for
this
that time.
is just for the cocoa butter.
Oh.
Yeah, but it just saves a lot of time because normally, with the seed method, I've got to bring the chocolate up to 110 degrees, put in my seed chocolate, stir forever. And then with this, I can do a lot. Those tempering machines only hold 1.5 pounds. Where with this, I can get my big melting, my mold art melting pot, and I can temper 15 pounds at a time. So we can do a lot more volume that way. How close are we? Oh my gosh. I'm not going to do that for the next class. I'm going to learn.
What's the brand on that thing?
Which thing?
The machine that tempers?
Oh, it's an easy temper. Easy.
Oh, okay.
Easy temper. Yeah. Almost. Not quite there. Okay. Oh, good. I have a few left over that I can dip. I didn't think about that.
There's some in that bag right there too.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Right here.
Would you bring me the chocolate?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks. Oh, perfect. So, I'm really weird, but I like to get like a serrated knife, and because they break out into like squares with like sharp edges, but I like to get a serrated knife and go around the pieces and kind of shave them down, just so they fit like the size I want them to fit. Oh, awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so we've got our chocolate here. Usually if I'm using the tempering machine, I like to dip while the machine's running. We're not going to run it now because it would make us go through the whole cycle. These machines don't let us start on just 87.6 degrees and turn it, but that's okay. But normally I like to dip with it turning. But with the sponge toffee, and usually with like buttercreams or caramels, I like to paint the bottom first so that they don't leak. These don't leak, and so I don't have to paint the bottom. But I'll just show you how I do it. So I pick which side I want to be bottom. Usually that's the side that's flat. So the flat side is obviously going to be the side that was on the parchment. So that's my flat side. So I go top first, and this is kind of the fun part, but the bottom is then going to become the top. That was way confusing, wasn't it? Anyways, so I'm going top first, the top that it is now. I should bring that forward, huh? Can you see that?
Yeah.
I prefer the fork, and I'll show you why. But I just get it all enrobed, right? And I don't want a foot, even though the foot is going to be the top when I'm done. But I like to take off a little excess chocolate. The Old Dutch is thick too, so. But then I catch an edge and I pull it from the bottom. Now, where I want that colored cocoa butter pattern to transfer onto the chocolate, I take the top and I kind of vibrate it a little bit just to make sure all of the chocolate settles onto the cocoa butter, right? So now, when this solidifies, the bottom is going to be the top. When I put it in the box, the bottom is going to be the top. Does that make sense?
Vibrate, what does that mean? Just pushing down?
I'm just pushing it down a little bit. Not so much that I'm forming a foot, but I just want to make sure, because when I pull the fork out from underneath, I'm creating two little lines where there's no chocolate. So I go back and I kind of vibrate it a little bit. Yeah. Vibrate or push it down a little bit.
How exactly did you get them purchased down?
I shaved them down with a serrated knife.
Plus you just went around.
Yeah.
Did it by eye.
Yeah. That's part of my OCD coming out. So just taking off some of the excess because I don't want a foot. And I'm pulling it out from the bottom. And then see that? It just kind of. Now I leave 2 dots on top, which normally that would drive me crazy. But again, the bottom is the top. It will be the top. And then I like to keep my utensils really clean. Again, that's just because it builds up. And
Is that known as a chocolate fork?
yeah. This is designed for chocolate. But you can buy these here.
The what? The machine?
The fork and the machines. Yeah.
I looked for the machines yesterday and
Are they sold out?
I don't know.
We
I
are.
just didn't see
Supply chain issues,
Yeah,
right?
yep. They're having production issues.
Oh. And how much do those run? Those kinds?
It depends on the size. I believe this one's $3.99.
Yeah.
What are the other sizes? One does a 1 pound and one does a 1.5 pound.
What brand is it?
Choco Vision.
So, how do you temper the chocolate? You just buy like guitar and put it in there?
Yeah, so it has a bar. I'll let John explain it.
So it melts the chocolate for you if you want. Typically I'll melt it in the microwave just to speed it up. And then it's like my easy temper. It keeps that variable of temperature at a constant, right? And so it gets it up to 110 degrees. And then on one side, once it gets there, it beeps at you. You put in your seethed chocolate, your tempered chocolate. You push a button and it starts bringing it down while it's moving. And it brings it down to the 80. For milk chocolate, there's 3 different buttons, milk, white, and dark. For milk chocolate, I think it brings it down to like 86.8. And then it's tempered and you keep it there. I didn't do a temper test. I always do a temper test even if it's in a tempering machine. I'm going to assume this is tempered, but yeah, they're really nice. They're perfect for a kind of a
How do
home
you do
deal.
your temper test?
So, thank you. I'm sorry. Real simple, I'll show you. You can even do it on a knife. You could stick it on a knife and just set it aside. Or if I wanted to, I could just spread it on my acetate or my transfer sheet. Usually what I'll do, because it's a fun experiment, is when it's not tempered, I'll do the same thing. I'll just spread some on a transfer sheet. And then 20 minutes later, when my chocolate's tempered, I do it again. And it's so fascinating because the tempered chocolate sets up in 2 minutes and the untempered chocolate's still wet. It's just like a cool science experiment.
So where do you get seed chocolate?
So that's what always trips people up. Seed chocolate is the exact same chocolate. So you buy a box of chocolate. If it's tempered, seed chocolate is just the chocolate that you set aside.
So like the guitar, you buy that.
You buy a block
Is
of
that
guitar.
tempered?
That's tempered, yeah. They'll sell it tempered unless you open it up and there's a like white bloom on it. They sell it tempered. So you chop up. Let's say you chop up 1,000 grams, right? You weigh 1,000 grams of chocolate and melt that. You then chop up 200 grams and set that aside. That set aside chocolate is your seed chocolate. It's not a different kind of chocolate. It's just the chocolate that you set aside. Because once you melt your 1,000 grams to 110 degrees, you then put in your seed chocolate, right? The whole idea is the seed chocolate is tempered, and so you're just stirring and moving around those properly crystallized cocoa butter crystals into your mass. And by the time it gets to 90 degrees, they're all properly distributed. That's the idea. Yeah. Does that make sense? Do you want to pass around? So we pass around the finished product. Yep. Let's see if this will break up now. I'll bet you it will. Yep. Oops. Yeah, I didn't break my line. That's all right.
With your perfect have you ever tried to make one of your own sheets?
You know, I haven't because you can buy them and they're beautiful. You know what I mean?
Yes.
This looks pretty good. It's not burnt. It's got some good bubbles. See, I'll take that. I'll take this right here. And if I want to get it into like a circular shape so it fits into my candy cups how I like it, I take a serrated knife and I just kind of quickly, yeah.
Can you reuse those?
That turned out good.
Can you reuse the sheets, or are they one-time deal?
One-time deal. Yeah. Maybe a little sticky, but you know what? It's still kind of warm. So I bet once that cools completely, it won't be sticky. Yeah, that turned out good. So you can see this, you know this chocolate's properly tempered because you can already see it's starting to dry. Okay, so you know it's properly tempered. But I won't take it off the transfer sheet, ideally, until tomorrow. Because it really takes chocolate, even though I know it's tempered, it still takes chocolate hours to crystallize fully. And so, like if I were sending this home with someone, we'd want to cut that off. Cut off a portion of it and then send them home. They can take it off the next day, right? That'll be really nice. Yeah.
So how do you make the papers really thin if you won't put the honeycomb or like a piece of candy type?
So I think that would probably be more of a toffee than a sponge toffee. Because sponge toffee is hard to make thin because you need those bubbles. You want those bubbles. If I were to spread it out thin, like when I put it on the parchment, if I take a spatula and spread it out thin, it's going to destroy all the bubbles and it's going to make it more just like an English toffee, like a hard toffee, right? Versus a sponge toffee. I'm so glad.
This is my favorite.
I'm so glad.
And every chocolatier, every place we visited, I always ask if they have seafoam.
Seafoam.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes yes, but
Yeah.
now I don't have to care.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you give classes?
Yeah. There's a little place called Coley's Kitchen in town. Yeah. Where I've done a couple classes. Yeah. Let's see, what else can I tell you?
You got this one really tall.
Was that one tall? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, like some of these, just depending how it pours out, right?
Yeah.
Some are going to definitely be, the edges are going to be thinner. And sometimes the edges are like too solid for my liking, so I don't use them. I'll just kind of use the meat of it. They're a little bit thicker. Yeah.
The taller ones are what I'm used to.
Yeah, I give the rejects to my kids, you know. Just so they know that they're rejects. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. so much. What other questions? These are all awesome questions. What else can I tell you? We've got 9 more minutes.
So, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
my question. If I wanna do this, like dip in chocolate, what do I need to buy? Because I don't have that, I don't
Yeah,
have that.
absolutely. So, all you need really is a good thermometer
But for the chocolate.
for the chocolate.
Yeah.
For the chocolate. You need a good thermometer, a digital thermometer, right? For chocolate. I actually, when I don't use a tempering machine, if I'm just doing a small batch and I'm tempering chocolate, I actually use a round stainless steel bowl in the microwave. I know that always freaks people out. But you can use stainless steel in the microwave as long as there's no scratches on it. So if you're gonna do it, just watch it for 10 seconds, make sure it's not arcing with like bursts of lightning, and you're fine. I like stainless steel because it doesn't get hot. But unlike silicone, it stays solid, so I can really scrape the edges, right? Silicone also doesn't get hot, which is nice in the microwave, but it's kind of flimsy. So I prefer like a stainless steel bowl, like 2 quarts, you know. And typically, if I temper chocolate that way, it's hard to temper. The smaller the batch, it's harder to temper. So like when you're starting, I would do 1,000 grams at least. So you melt 1,000 grams and you set aside 20% as your seed chocolate. Okay?
20% of
20% of the mass you melt in the microwave, you set aside 200 or 20%, right? Wafers, right? Because the idea is you want it to melt, be all melted by the end. I guess hypothetically you could do chunks, but you remove them. You want to remove them at the end to be able to work with the chocolate, right? Because if I had to deal with, if this wasn't smooth and it had like little unmelted wafers or little unmelted chocolate, it would be a real pain to work with.
So you're saying buy the wafer beer?
I think it's easier. It's easier.
At the
Yeah, I mean,
store.
you could get the big block and chop it up, but that's a pain. Yeah.
Set
Good job.
aside 20%.
Yeah, for the people watching live, they were asking if you could just repeat the recipe, like the ingredients used.
Absolutely. It is 2.5 cups of granulated sugar, 2/3 cup corn syrup, 2 teaspoons vanilla, 1/2 cup water, and 2 tablespoons, I say 1.5 tablespoons of baking soda for the end. It should be on, I think it's on the Gygi website too. But yeah, 2.5 cups sugar, 2/3 corn syrup, 2 teaspoons vanilla, 1/2 cup water, and 1.5 baking soda.
If you had used 2 tablespoons, would that have risen more? Would it be thicker?
You know, my experience has been that no, it
Okay.
wouldn't have. It just, no, that's about the bubbles I normally get, maybe
Right.
2 tablespoons, but it just seems like there's like a diminishing returns with the baking soda, so I might as well just do less and it won't have that baking soda taste, you know. Any other questions? I'm so glad you came, and I hope you learned a lot. Feel free to ask me other questions if you want to stick around. Is anyone going to the